Welcome to the Sleepy Journeys Through History podcast, your sanctuary to learn while you sleep. My name's Jack, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Tonight we're going to embark on a gentle journey through the rise and fall of ancient Rome. The stars shimmer faintly above the horizon, casting a pale silver glow over a landscape carved by centuries. As you settle in, imagine the still air of an ancient evening, where the scent of rosemary and fig leaves wafts on the breeze, and time, like the Tiber River, flows unhurried beneath a canopy of moonlight. In the soft cradle of history, we begin tonight's journey through one of the most storied civilizations the world has ever known. Ancient Rome, its name spoken with reverence, curiosity, and wonder across the ages. It is a place of marble temples and dusty roads, of philosophers and soldiers, of soaring ambition and gentle twilight decline. We'll travel through the birth of a kingdom raised on myth, to the rise of a republic forged through law and order. We'll drift alongside silent legions, crossing distant lands, and stand quietly beneath the golden glow of imperial grandeur. As the centuries turn like the slow shifting of seasons, we'll watch as cracks begin to form in Rome's once unshakable foundation. Not with chaos, but with the inevitability of change. Let yourself wander into that dreamlike space where myth and memory blend, and the rhythm of ancient footsteps echoes softly through the cobblestone streets. Picture the 7 hills of Rome rising gently from the earth, cloaked in olive groves and crowned by whispering cypress trees. In the distance, the Forum sleeps under a cloak of silence, once the vibrant heart of the empire, now resting in peace. There is no rush here. The empire, after all, took centuries to rise, and even longer to fade. So we will take our time, drifting through marble arches and shaded atriums, listening to the creak of ancient wooden doors, feeling the cool touch of stone beneath our fingertips. With every step, the world of Rome reveals itself in softness and serenity. You are safe here. You are welcome here. And as we begin this journey together, you may find your breath slowing, your muscles relaxing, and your thoughts beginning to quiet. Let go of your day. Let the worries dissolve like shadows at dawn. Tonight, we are not chasing history. We are walking beside it, hand in hand with the past, through gardens of time. And so, beneath the moon-kissed sky of long ago, we begin. Welcome, traveler, to the rise and fall of ancient Rome. Long ago, when the earth still whispered secrets to those who listened, and wild laurel trees cast long shadows across untamed hills, there was a quiet hush over the land that would one day become Rome. It was a land of mystery, of rich soil and still waters, where the early winds of destiny rustled through the reeds beside the river Tiber. In this dreamlike beginning, the tale of 2 brothers unfolds, not just a story, but a lullaby sung by time itself. Romulus and Remus. Their names drift like mist through the corridors of history. twin sons of Mars, the god of war, and Rhea Silvia, a Vestal priestess. Their birth was cloaked in divine will and mortal danger. Cast adrift in a basket upon the river, they did not sink into obscurity. Instead, the river cradled them gently, guiding them toward their fate. The legend tells of a she-wolf, maternal and fierce, who found the infants on the riverbank. She bent to them not with teeth, but with tenderness. Her breath was warm as she nurtured them beneath a fig tree in the hollow of a cave called the Lupercal. The sound of her heartbeat, slow and steady, was their first lullaby. Imagine the dim cave, cool and safe, tucked within the Palatine Hill. The wind sighs outside, stirring the leaves, while inside, the children sleep nestled against the soft fur of their unlikely guardian. Each breath of the she-wolf is a promise. Each day that dawns, a step towards something greater. Later, as they grew, they were taken in by a kindly shepherd and his wife. The wildness of the forest began to blend with the warmth of human care. Romulus and Remus would climb rocky paths, their sandals scuffing ancient stone. They would peer into the distance, across rolling fields and winding streams, dreaming of something they couldn't yet name. In time, their true heritage would reveal itself. And as young men, filled with purpose and pride, they would seek to found a city of their own. A city born of both myth and marrow, of spirit and soil. Yet even here, in this tale sung with reverence, there is sorrow. For in a moment of pride and argument, the bond of brotherhood was broken. Romulus, in a flash of passion and ambition, struck down Remus. It is said that Remus leapt across the boundaries Romulus had drawn for his city, a symbolic act perhaps, or a fateful misstep. And Romulus, furious, declared that no one would cross his walls and live. And so Rome began, not with thunder or triumph, but with silence, with mourning, with the weight of what had been lost. A city built not just from stones, but from stories, from sacrifice, from the ache of memory. Romulus named the city after himself, and with each brick laid upon another, each arch lifted skyward, he shaped a place that would echo across the world. As you drift here, beside the soft winds of the Tiber and beneath the shade of the fig tree, imagine the heartbeat of the she-wolf still echoing faintly through the hills. A lullaby from long ago, a beginning whispered into being. With the story of Romulus etched into the soil, Rome slowly lifted itself from myth into early memory. From the wooded banks of the Tiber to the sun-warmed slopes of the Palatine Hill, the young city stirred like a dream gently unfolding. It was not yet the bustling hub of empire we know, but a humble collection of huts and hearths, flickering with firelight beneath the open sky. Romulus, now king, guided his fledgling settlement with the intensity of vision and the shadow of loss. As you rest here in the quiet hours, imagine the distant crackle of a fire in a primitive Roman hut, its light dancing upon the curved walls of wattle and daub. Outside, the wind carries the scent of damp earth and laurel leaves, and the hoot of an owl echoes from a nearby tree. This earliest chapter of the Roman kingdom spanned centuries, centuries that unfolded with a slow, deliberate rhythm. From Romulus to the kings that followed, each left subtle impressions upon the city's bones, like gentle waves shaping the shore. There were 7 kings in total, each bringing change as softly as a new season. After Romulus vanished, some said carried to the heavens in a chariot of storm, Numa Pompilius rose, a man of peace and wisdom. Under his reign, temples blossomed beside sacred groves, and religious rituals began to take root. The heartbeat of Rome grew steadier, its soul enriched by quiet contemplation. Picture the Temple of Vesta, its flame flickering eternally, tended by veiled priestesses who moved through the hush with reverence. The sound of a bronze bell chimes gently in the morning mist as citizens pass in silence, feeling the invisible presence of the gods. Later kings brought their own quiet legacies. Tullus Hostilius, bold but distant. Ancus Marcius, a builder of bridges and soft-spoken strength. Each shaped Rome like a sculptor with a patient hand, carving out a city of order, of ambition, of dignity. Then came the Etruscan kings, rich in pageantry, their traditions adorned in gold and ceremony. Tarquinius Priscus brought wealth and spectacle. Servius Tullius, born of humble origins, was said to be touched by flame and favor. He laid out the city's first census and built walls that stood tall beneath the sun. And yet, in time, the last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud, would mark an end. His reign grew colder, more distant. Whispers of cruelty and arrogance began to stir like winds before a storm. The people, who once stood in quiet awe, now looked upon their ruler with unease. In this gentle chapter of early kings, Rome was molded by ceremony, by custom, by the slow layering of identity. Its streets may have still been earthen paths, its homes little more than huts, but its heart was awakening. Tonight, let us rest beneath the imagined timbers of those first rooftops, warmed by the embers of Rome's earliest fires. The city has opened its eyes, and though it does not yet see its full destiny, it dreams of what is to come. And in that dream, you too may find peace. As dawn broke gently over Rome's early skyline, a subtle but monumental shift stirred beneath the city's surface. The soft clang of the morning bell echoed through the waking streets, but this morning was different. The age of kings, long and slow as a river, was ending, and in its place, a new chapter began. Not with thunder, but with firm, quiet resolve. The story passed down is one of quiet rebellion and noble intent. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, had grown distant from the people, his rule brittle with arrogance, his court echoing with whispers of tyranny. The final spark, historians say, came with an act of deep injustice, stirring the hearts of Romans into still and solemn unity. Lucius Junius Brutus, often remembered as a founding father of the Republic, stepped forward. With a steady voice and eyes full of silent purpose, he called for a new order, one without kings. Not a revolution of violence, but of structure. Not ruled by one, but guided by many. And so, around the year 509 BCE, the Roman Republic was born. Imagine the sound of sandals scuffing stone as the first consuls walked side by side down a city path, their togas brushing softly against their legs, faces lit by the golden warmth of the rising sun. The early republic was not polished or mighty. It was delicate, like a sapling just beginning to reach for the sky. 2 consuls, equal in power, would govern together. Their term, 1 year. Their bond, accountability. No crown, no throne, just the weight of duty and a whispered oath to serve Rome. Picture the Roman Forum on a quiet morning. Birds call from the rafters of nearby temples, and merchants unpack their wares with slow care. In the distance, 2 men speak not as kings, but as citizens. There is a gentleness to this new rhythm, a balance beginning to take shape. Though Rome was still small, its heart had grown. The idea of the Republic, like a soft song passed from person to person, began to echo through homes and assemblies. Senate meetings held beneath open skies, voices lifted not to command, but to consult. It was an experiment in harmony, where the laws whispered of justice, and the people found their place not beneath a ruler, but beside one another. There were challenges, of course, always. But in this early moment, this breath between monarchy and democracy, Rome found clarity, a new identity rooted in shared responsibility. And so, as you rest here tonight, imagine that transition not as a violent turning, but as a soft unfolding, a lantern passed from hand to hand, a gentle breeze lifting the sails of a new beginning. The monarchy had faded like a long dream at dawn, and the Republic, with its quiet dignity, had taken its first steps into history. In the gentle unfolding of the Republic, Rome began to whisper new ideas into being, ideas of structure, of fairness, and of voice. The city, still young in the eyes of history, sought to root itself in something enduring. Not a palace, nor a statue, but something quiet, yet deeply powerful, law. And so, the 12 tables were born. It began with murmurs among the people. In the early Republic, much of the law was held within the minds of Rome's patricians, its aristocratic families. These laws, unwritten and flexible, were whispered in courts and homes, known only to the few. To the plebeians, the common people, this felt like shadows hiding the truth. They sought light, clarity, a set of rules that could not be changed with a word or a whim. Imagine a hillside gathering at twilight. Men in simple tunics speak softly, their voices mingling with the wind, carrying hopes of justice and protection. Their children play nearby, unaware that the future is shifting gently beneath their feet. In response to the growing plea, Rome sent envoys to study the laws of other lands, especially the Greeks, whose own democratic structures were blooming. The findings returned with reverence, and soon a council was formed to write Rome's first formal code. Picture the forum once again, but now with craftsmen carefully carving deep letters into bronze tablets. Each law etched slowly, purposefully, as if shaping not just the surface of the metal, but the character of the city itself. These 12 bronze tables would stand in public view, open to all, unchanging, unhidden. They covered many aspects of daily life: property, debt, marriage, crime, and family. Some were harsh by today's standards, but they were clear. And in their clarity, there was peace. It was not just the laws that changed Rome, but the very act of making them known. A farmer could walk past the tablets on his way to market and know where he stood. A merchant could read his rights in the sunlight, not in secret shadows. Justice had begun to speak in the open, in the language of permanence. Civic life blossomed in kind. Citizens gathered in assemblies to vote on matters that shaped their world. They elected magistrates, voiced concerns, and took part in rituals that made them feel, quietly, that they belonged to something greater. There were no grand parades, no fire-lit declarations, just steady participation, like raindrops nourishing roots. Rome was learning how to breathe together, how to live by shared rules, and how to grow from the wisdom of its people. And so tonight, as you rest your mind, picture those 12 tablets glinting softly beneath the Roman sun. Imagine the gentle hum of the marketplace around them, the calm dignity in knowing the rules that guide your steps. Let the certainty of law, the structure of civic life, and the slow rhythm of daily order soothe your thoughts. The city now was more than stone. It was bound by words, and in those words, Rome had found its quiet strength. Time moved gently, as it always does in Rome. Seasons turned over olive trees and the golden fields of Latium. But with every passing year, the Republic grew stronger, its reach extending slowly, like vines curling outward from the heart of the city. And soon, those vines would brush against other powers. The world beyond the sea began to stir. Across the waters to the south stood Carthage, a mighty city cloaked in its own rich history, its harbor filled with sails and its markets vibrant with life. Rome and Carthage, two civilizations, each vast and quietly proud, would become entangled in a long, simmering dance of conflict. Not a sudden battle, but a series of long, echoing steps across land and sea. These were the Punic Wars. Wars fought not just for land, but for presence, for identity, for the soft, subtle pull of destiny. The second of these, wars, brought forth a name spoken even today with reverent awe: Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian general, calm and calculating, who would dare something almost unthinkable, to march an army from Iberia across the towering Alps and into the very heart of Roman soil. Imagine, if you will, the early morning mist on those alpine peaks. The cold air breathes across the ridges, brushing the armor of soldiers who whisper softly to one another in ancient tongues. Below them, pack animals shift their weight, and among them, elephants. Great, lumbering giants cloaked in wool and resolve, stepping slowly across the snow-covered stones. Hannibal's march was a quiet kind of legend, a feat of endurance, not spectacle, of patience, not pomp. He moved through the Alps not with thunder, but with silence, his army bound by sheer will. The sound of hooves on frozen earth, the creak of leather straps, and the low breath of determination filled the air. As he descended into Italy, Rome looked inward. They had never faced such a threat within their homeland. Yet the Republic, in its calm resilience, did not panic. It braced. It endured. Battle after battle unfolded, each a soft tremor in the vast story of the Republic. At Cannae, Hannibal's tactics enveloped the Roman legions like a quiet storm, elegant, precise, devastating. But Rome, even in defeat, did not fall. It did not crumble. It held. Years passed, and the tides turned not with fire, but with quiet attrition. Rome adapted. It learned, and slowly it began to reclaim its strength. Eventually, it was not in Italy, but in Africa where the final strokes were drawn. At Zama, a Roman general named Scipio, later called Africanus, met Hannibal in battle. The two great minds faced one another, not as enemies full of hatred, but as reflections. Strategists bound by a mutual respect shaped in silence. Rome emerged victorious. Carthage was spared, but weakened. And the Republic, stronger than before, stood quietly at the threshold of greatness. As you rest now, picture that alpine path, long since returned to quiet snow. The footprints of soldiers long gone, the whisper of wind through mountain pine. Hannibal's march was not just a campaign, it was a dream woven through frost and fire. And Rome, ever patient, ever watchful, had endured. With the Punic Wars settled and Hannibal's shadow gently fading into history, Rome turned its gaze outward, not with haste, but with the quiet certainty of a tide pulling steadily across distant shores. The Mediterranean, once a series of separate worlds, began to take on a new rhythm, a Roman rhythm, steady, intentional, expansive. The Republic did not shout its presence. It arrived slowly, with legions that marched with discipline and administrators who carried scrolls of law instead of crowns. From the coasts of Hispania to the valleys of Gaul, from the polished temples of Greece to the sands of North Africa, Rome moved step by step, stone by stone. Imagine a Roman ship bobbing gently on a calm sea. The sail billows like a slow breath, and below deck, soldiers murmur in low tones as they stare into the horizon. In the distance, the outline of a new land emerges, foreign, unfamiliar, yet waiting. These were not the rapid storms of conquest. They were gradual awakenings. Treaties offered, roads built, colonies formed with a careful hand. Roman culture, its language, its customs, its systems of governance, began to ripple outward like circles on still water. In Greece, philosophers once accustomed to open debate now shared ideas in Latin. Statues of Roman governors began to appear in public squares once adorned only by marble deities of Olympus. But it was not just dominance. It was exchange. Rome absorbed as much as it gave. Picture a quiet garden in a Hellenistic city, now under Roman control. A mosaic walkway glints in the dappled sunlight. An old Greek teacher reads poetry to children learning Latin for the first time. Above, an olive tree sways gently, caught between the breath of two worlds. As Rome's territories expanded, so did its roads. Great highways stretched across hills and plains, straight and enduring. The Appian Way, called the Queen of Roads, connected distant lands to the heart of the Republic. Along these roads moved more than legions. They carried ideas, spices, music, and memory. But as the Republic grew, so too did its burden. Conquests brought not only wealth, but complexity. New provinces meant new peoples to govern, new borders to protect. There were murmurs of unrest among those who questioned who truly held power, the Senate or the generals who commanded faraway armies with near absolute loyalty. For now, though, let us linger in the still moments of expansion. A Roman surveyor stands in silence at the edge of a newly claimed plain, marking the beginning of a future settlement. Behind him, the sun sets low over the hills, casting golden light across the fields. In that light, a distant temple reflects the glow, foreign yet familiar now under the soft shadow of Rome. And so, the Republic continued to grow, not with loud proclamations, but with deliberate care. The Mediterranean, once a sea of many shores, was becoming, slowly and unmistakably, a Roman lake. Let your thoughts float across that sea tonight. Drift with the gentle current past quiet ports and stone-built harbors. Let the scent of myrrh and baked bread rise from the markets of new provinces. And know that Rome, with all its calm resolve, is building something vast, piece by piece, with the patience of eternity. The Republic, stretched across continents, now pulsed with quiet intensity. Beneath its dignified marble facade and rhythmic governance, subtle shifts had begun to stir, shifts born of ambition, legacy, and the slow tension between tradition and change. And in the midst of it all stood one man, Gaius Julius Caesar. He did not arrive with thunder. He entered the world through the humblest of beginnings, born into a patrician family without wealth. Ambition whispered into his cradle like a lullaby. He rose not through fortune, but through a slow and steady weaving of alliances, eloquence, and action. Each step carefully placed, like a stone laid upon another to form a quiet but unshakable path. Imagine a young Caesar standing beneath the soft arches of a Roman portico. The morning air is still, and the sun slips gently over the tiled roofs. His eyes are thoughtful, not yet shadowed by power, but filled with the wide silence of possibility. In time, Caesar became a general, not just of men, but of ideas. He led with vision, his campaigns stretching far into Gaul, across forests veiled in mist and rivers cold with ancient strength. His soldiers followed him not only for his skill, but for the quiet certainty that he would never ask more than he himself would give. Picture a Roman camp at dusk, lanterns flickering among canvas tents, the sound of sharpening blades softly humming in the background. Around a central fire, Caesar speaks, not loudly, but with deliberate calm. His voice carries the weight of strategy and of story, wrapping his men in a cocoon of purpose. But back in Rome, his growing influence stirred concern. The Senate, long the bedrock of the Republic, watched uneasily. Caesar's popularity with the people was a rising tide. And when he crossed the Rubicon River, a quiet stream, modest in appearance, yet thunderous in symbolism, he made a silent promise that Rome would change and there would be no turning back. The crossing was not a moment of chaos, but of heavy stillness. The water murmured over smooth stones. The wind moved gently through the trees, and yet it marked the end of an age. As Caesar marched on Rome, the city did not erupt. It paused. It listened, and it shifted. Once in power, Caesar began to reshape the Republic. He reformed calendars, stabilized debts, and opened citizenship. He moved not with haste, but with precision, like a sculptor revealing new form from old marble. Still, his presence grew too vast, too singular for a city built on shared rule. Some feared he would crown himself king. And for those who cherished the quiet balance of the Republic, that fear became unbearable. So they conspired, not in shouts, but in whispers. And on the Ides of March, in the stillness of the Senate, the knife met the robe. As Caesar fell, his final breath joined the silence of the ages. The Republic trembled, not from collapse, but from transformation. The old way had ended. A new world, still unnamed, waited just beyond the veil. Tonight, let us walk with Caesar through that final sunrise, when the world still held its breath. Let us feel the cool stone of the farm beneath our steps, and the weight of quiet change pressing gently on the air. For Rome was no longer just a republic. It had become something else, shaped by the will of one, but destined to echo in the name of many. The Ides of March arrived not with storm or fire, but with stillness. The 15th day of the Roman month had once been a mark of balance, a point of reckoning beneath the careful gaze of the calendar. But on that day in 44 BCE, it became something more. A breath held, a shadow stretched, a whisper that would echo through all of history. Julius Caesar entered the Senate with calm. The air was light, the marble corridors hushed beneath the flutter of togas. Above, the early sun filtered through narrow windows, casting pale golden shafts across the stone floor. It was, in many ways, an ordinary morning. But within the walls of the Curia of Pompeii, a different kind of silence lingered, tense and poised. The conspirators stood scattered, each one cloaked in a veil of solemnity. They did not rage. They did not shout. They simply waited, blades hidden, resolve quiet and cold. As Caesar approached his seat, the circle tightened. What followed was not a chaos of war, but the concentrated intensity of choice. A moment where conviction became action, not with drums or horns, but with the soft rush of cloth and the fleeting glint of steel. One by one, the daggers found their mark, and among them Brutus, Caesar's friend, his protege. The touch of betrayal turned the final breath not into a cry, but a question. A moment suspended, remembered more for the silence that followed than the strike itself. The Senate chamber stood still. The wound was not only to flesh, but to the fabric of Rome itself. Imagine now the hush that fell over the city. The cobbled streets paused. The markets fell silent. The Tiber River flowed on, indifferent, but carrying with it the subtle ripples of change. For the conspirators, their hope had been a restoration, a return to the days of balanced power, of law and deliberation. But Caesar's death did not revive the Republic. Instead, it fractured it further. Riots began to swell softly through the alleys of the city. Citizens wept and wailed. The theater of politics grew tense, and out of the haze rose new figures: Mark Antony, Lepidus, and a quiet young man with watchful eyes, Gaius Octavius, Caesar's adopted heir. The power vacuum did not leave silence. It invited struggle. Another war. Another reckoning. But for a moment, let us stay in the aftermath. Let us walk the streets of Rome in the stillness of evening, as torches flicker before closed doors, and whispers travel like threads through shadowed archways. The statue of Caesar in the Forum now bears garlands left by grieving hands. His image, once of command, now rests beneath the soft weight of mourning. There is no turning back. The Republic has been mortally wounded, not by the ambition of one man, but by the tension between old and new, tradition and transformation. And yet, the story is not over. Rome endures. It always does. So let us linger here, in the gentle quiet after the storm. Let the stillness settle into your breath, the distant hum of Rome's eternal rhythm soothing your thoughts. The world is shifting, but tonight, we remain still. From the ashes of conflict, a new calm rose, a hush that seemed to wrap itself around the city like a soft veil. The Republic had faded, its structures transformed, yet Rome endured. And in its place stood a new order, shaped not by the roar of armies, but by a singular, measured presence. Gaius Octavius, known to the world as Augustus, stepped into the world's stage not as a conqueror with fanfare, but as a restorer of quiet strength. Named heir by Julius Caesar, he moved through the corridors of power with a grace that blended patience with precision. His reign, beginning in 27 BCE, would come to be known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Imagine Rome beneath his rule, streets swept clean at dawn, market stalls opening to the scent of bread and herbs, children chasing each other across warm stone courtyards. The city exhaled. The clang of civil war was behind her, and in its place, stability, beauty, and order. Augustus did not claim the title of king or emperor in name, but he held the reins of power with a quiet hand. He wore the mantle of princeps, the first among equals, subtle, respectful of tradition. Yet beneath that modest title was the full weight of imperial authority. Picture him standing on the steps of a newly built marble temple, draped in a toga of ivory white. His posture serene, his words measured. The people below listen in stillness, not from fear, but from trust. He had brought peace, and that peace would last for generations. The city itself began to reflect his vision. Temples and arches rose where once there had been ruin. The Pantheon, the Areopagus, the altar of peace, stood as symbols not just of Rome's might, but of its sense of purpose. Statues, not of warlords, but of citizens. Roads extended farther than ever, connecting Rome to the furthest whispers of its provinces. Augustus reformed the grain supply, ensured water flowed into fountains and baths, and established a postal system that gently threaded distant lands together. The hum of governance was steady, efficient, like a harp strummed with a gentle, practiced hand. Even the legions, though ever present, stood in still formation more often than not. Their banners fluttered quietly along borderlands, not in attack, but in vigil. Rome was no longer merely expanding, it was settling into itself. Comfortable, confident, composed. And in this age of calm, literature flourished. The poet Virgil penned the Aeneid, echoing the legend of Rome's divine origin, weaving history and myth like threads of gold through a tapestry of time. Ovid and Horace sang of love and leisure, their verses gliding softly through the villas of senators and scribes alike. Let yourself drift through this serene vision of Rome. The breeze carries the fragrance of pine and jasmine. In the distance, a column catches the afternoon light. There is no rush. The empire breathes in balance. For Augustus, the goal was not glory in battle, but harmony in life. A peace that could be felt not only in the absence of war, but in the rhythm of daily joys, the comfort of a warm bath, the rustle of parchment, the footsteps of a friend. And though history would eventually move beyond him, in this golden age, Augustus became not a ruler, but a steward of quiet eternity. Beneath the grand domes and sweeping arches, beyond the stately avenues and imperial decrees, Rome was a city alive with the gentle rhythm of daily life. Its splendor was not found only in monuments, but in the soft footsteps of its people, in the slow unfolding of ordinary hours. As the sun rose above the 7 hills, golden light spilled across tiled rooftops and into open courtyards. The eternal city awoke not with clamor, but with calm purpose. Birds chirped from perches on temple columns, while thin plumes of smoke curled upward from hearths nestled inside simple homes and elegant villas alike. Picture a Roman domus, a family dwelling with ivy along its walls. In its center, the atrium pools soft morning light. A servant pours water from a bronze pitcher, and the air is rich with the scent of warm bread, olives, and herbs. Outside, the street begins to stir. The soft grind of millstones, the creak of wooden carts, the murmur of greetings between neighbors. Children play with clay dolls or carve small figures from scraps of wood. Their laughter floats lightly on the breeze, mingling with the clink of pottery in the hands of street vendors preparing for the day. A baker arranges honey cakes in neat rows beneath a shaded awning, and a scribe smooths fresh parchment across his writing desk, ink poised like a feathered thought. The baths begin to fill. Public and private, they are places not only of cleansing, but of conversation and stillness. Warm water, sunlight flickering across marble, and the low hum of voices. The Romans prized hygiene, but even more so the serenity of shared ritual. In these spaces, strangers became citizens side by side, wrapped in the steamy hush of timeless custom. Women, often overlooked in stories of empire, moved with quiet agency through this world. Some owned businesses, others managed households with grace and wisdom. Many whispered prayers to household gods, their hands raising incense before small domestic altars tucked into garden corners or quiet rooms. The divine to a Roman was not distant. It lived beside them, in fire, in food, in fortune. The Forum, Rome's heart, pulsed with steady energy. Not hurried, but ever flowing. Merchants called out in soft tones. Philosophers gestured thoughtfully beneath shaded colonnades. Magistrates in crisp togas moved between courthouses, scribes in tow. The voices of Rome's people wove together like threads of music in a steady lullaby of order and purpose. As day gave way to twilight, oil lamps flickered to life. The air cooled. Families gathered. Some recited poetry. Others listened to stories passed down in low voices beneath starlit skies. The scent of lavender drifted from pillows. In Insula, the city's apartment buildings, citizens lulled their children to sleep with quiet songs while distant flutes played somewhere far off, like a memory on the wind. Even in the grandeur of empire, life in Rome held moments of softness. Its eternity was not built from conquest alone, but from the daily grace of living, of washing, eating, speaking, listening, remembering. It was a city of routines, of tiny beauties, of unspoken connection between neighbors and generations. Let yourself rest within this rhythm now. Imagine walking those narrow alleys, your footsteps blending with the countless ones before you. Hear the fountain's quiet splash. Feel the worn smoothness of marble benches warmed by centuries of sunlight. In the eternal city, time flows gently, and for a moment, it flows through you. Rome, once a radiant center of order and might, began to show signs of quiet strain. Not all at once, not with thunder, but with a slow loosening. Like a grand mosaic weathered by time, the image remained, but small pieces, once firmly held, began to shift. The empire had grown vast, stretching from the windswept coasts of Britannia to the golden deserts of Egypt. Its heart still beat in Rome, but the limbs extended far, and the pulse of unity began to falter. The burden of governance across such distance pressed gently but firmly on the old structures. Emperors came and went with uneasy frequency. Some ruled with wisdom and strength, others faded quickly into obscurity. The Senate's voice grew faint, like a once strong melody, now only faintly remembered. In the streets, the people felt it, not panic, not despair, but a drifting. A sense that the golden age had slowly passed. To ease the strain, the empire was divided. In 285 CE, Emperor Diocletian split the empire into two parts, east and west. The idea was elegant, a sharing of responsibility. Two emperors, two capitals. But with division came separation. What had once been one body now moved with two minds. The East, centered in Byzantium, would thrive for centuries. The West, however, began its quiet descent. Imagine the western frontier, dotted with outposts beneath an overcast sky. Legionaries stand on guard, their armor dulled from long use, eyes ever fixed on the horizon. Beyond the borders, tribes stirred. The Visigoths, Vandals, and others, peoples not of malice, but of motion, pressed against the boundaries. Their presence was steady, not sudden, like the rising of a slow tide. In 410 CE, that tide reached Rome. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, entered the eternal city, not with rage, but with weary resolve. The sack of Rome was a symbol, not just a siege. For the first time in 8 centuries, the city fell to foreign hands. And yet, even then, Rome was not destroyed. The city remained. People returned. The dust settled. Rome was not undone in a moment. It unraveled gently, like cloth fading beneath the sun. Roads went unmaintained. Aqueducts faltered. Trade patterns shifted. The hum of daily life grew quieter in the western provinces. And still, beauty endured. Even in decline, Rome held to its customs. Citizens still gathered in marketplaces. Children still recited poetry. Temples, though faded, still caught the light of morning. In the silence of change, there was still dignity. As you rest now, let your thoughts drift through those gentle ruins. Vines curl over stone. Birds nest in broken arches. The marble remains cool beneath your fingertips. Time passes, yes, but it does not erase. It softens. It transforms. The decline of Rome was not a fall, but a passage. Not an end, but a turning. And in the hush of that transformation, there is space to reflect, to remember, and to rest. By the end of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire, once so mighty and sure, had grown still. It no longer expanded, no longer reached with eager hands across the world. It had become something quieter, more introspective, like an old olive tree, gnarled in a own beautiful, whose fruit had ripened and now slowly returned to earth. In the year 476 CE, a quiet moment passed almost unnoticed in the great sweep of time. A boy, Romulus Augustulus, was named emperor. His name, echoing the founder of Rome, shimmered with symbolism, but he held little real power. He ruled not from strength, but from tradition, not from grandeur, but from ceremony. And then, with barely a whisper, he was deposed. The man who set him aside was Odoacer, a Germanic leader who did not raise Rome or torch its temples. Instead, he simply removed the title, sent the imperial regalia eastward to Constantinople, a gesture of closure, of yielding, of acknowledgement that the time of Western emperors had quietly drawn to a close. There was no grand proclamation, no fiery collapse, only a hush, a breath drawn in and slowly released. Rome did not vanish. It remained, just changed. Imagine now a dawn in that fading city. The streets still hold their shape, though fewer feet walk them. The Forum stands quiet, its columns softened by moss and time. A few citizens still gather to exchange news, their voices low, respectful of the stillness. The baths are cooler now, the libraries more silent, but life continues in its own gentle way. Church bells begin to replace the chants of Jupiter and Mars. Latin prayers echo where once senatorial speeches rang out. The old gods are still there, hidden in sculpture and story, resting beneath the robes of new beliefs. In quiet courtyards, families share stories by lamplight. The stories of Caesar and Augustus, of legions and philosophers, of laughter in the amphitheaters and processions down the Via Sacra. Rome is no longer an empire, but it is not forgotten. It is remembered in stone, in language, in the way people walk the streets with reverence for what was. Elsewhere, the Eastern Roman Empire continues to thrive in Byzantium. Rome's soul migrates eastward, reborn in new forms, but never truly gone. It drifts like incense through cathedrals, like ivy along old temples, alive in different ways. Let yourself walk now through the ruins, not as something broken, but something peaceful. The marble is warm beneath the afternoon sun. A fountain trickles quietly in a shaded square. The past surrounds you, not haunting, but comforting. The voices of history are hushed, but present. They do not demand to be heard. They invite you to listen. This is not an ending. It is a return, a folding back into the soil, into memory, into time. Rome, the eternal city, had faded from power. But in that fading, it became something immortal. not in conquest, but in echo, not in dominance, but in depth. And here, in this final moment, we rest. And so, as the stars rise once more above the 7 hills, we leave behind the marble shadows and golden echoes of ancient Rome. The journey we have taken tonight has wound its way softly through myth and memory, across centuries wrapped in silken time. From the cradle of Romulus and the fig tree's shade, to the gentle curve of empire's fading breath, we've wandered not in haste, but with reverence. The story of Rome is not a loud one when heard this way. It is a lullaby of civilization, a quiet rhythm of stone laid upon stone, of footsteps pressed into dust, of words whispered from one generation to the next. Let yourself remember the soft rush of the Tiber River, the cool hush of temple courtyards at dawn, the scent of olives and rain on warm stone. Let your mind rest in the stillness of ancient baths and the flickering lamplight of Roman homes, where voices once recited verses to the stars. Think of the banners that once fluttered above distant frontiers, now lowered and folded with care. Think of Augustus, standing beneath marble columns, calm and unshaken. Think of the 12 tables glinting in the Roman sun, of the snow crunching softly beneath Hannibal's silent march, of the footsteps that crossed the Rubicon, of the garlands placed upon Caesar's statue by unseen hands. These are the threads that wove Rome's legacy, a tapestry not unraveled, but laid gently to rest. Its story now lives in the stones, in the pages of memory, in the quiet places where history meets the hush of dreaming. As we return from the past, let the sounds grow softer still. Let your breath slow with the rhythm of ancient streets. Let your mind settle like dust beneath a twilight sky. You are home now, not in the bustling center of empire, but in the serene quiet that follows, in the glow of what once was, and the peace of knowing it remains. The lamps are lit, the city sleeps, and so may you.